Good afternoon. My name is Maria Buca. I'm the organist here, one of the organists, and the director of music. Thank you for allowing me to share my music with you today. The piece I have chosen to play is one of my favorites. It's the Intermezzo in A major by Opus 118 by Johannes Brahms. I learned it as a piano major at the University of Minnesota under the tutelage of Dr. Bernard Weiser. I can honestly say that I never play it the same way twice. There is so much richness to this piece, and as you grow as a musician, as a person, music evolves. It's constantly changing. So I'm never totally satisfied with my interpretation. There's always more to discover. I would like to share some history about the piece itself. The Intermezzo in A major is surely one of the most beloved short piano pieces from the Romantic period. It pulls us into a world of dreamy nostalgia, quiet longing, and majestic, serene beauty. The term intermezzo comes from the theatrical tradition of inserting a light diversion between the acts of a larger, serious work. But Brahms isn't creating trifles, despite his titles. His intermezzos are never superficial, but intensely confidential and intimate, deeply private, but gently shared. The Intermezzo in A major was written in 1893 towards the end of Brahms' life. It was written and dedicated to Clara Schumann to play in her autumn years, and it depicts the deep yearning that Brahms had for her and the relationship that they might have had. Listen to the way the first three notes set the entire piece in motion. As it unfolds and develops, you may sense that the music is searching for a way forward, attempting to find just the right note. About 1 minute into the piece, you will hear the opening motive return in the bass. The expansive middle section offers new adventures. As this section fades away, listen to the magical way we find our way back home to the original theme. Intermezzo in A major by Johannes Brahms.
Hi everyone, I'm Karin Ingstrand, and this is my model husband, Dan Ingstrand. He's a model in many ways. And I'm here because I made our bunads. For those of you who don't know, bunads are, that's a name for the Norwegian national costume. There are more than 300 bunads. A bunad is specific for a district in Norway, and some districts have more than one, but there's at least one woman's bunad and one man's bunad, and of course the women's bunads are more popular. The requirements to be a bunad in a district is the requirements of what kind of fabric you use, sometimes the color, certainly the construction, the shape, those kinds of things, and the suya, that's the name for the silver, because they have historical roots. If you make something that looks like this but don't follow the rules, then you've made probably a beautiful, what they call festdrakt, but you can't call it a bunad, but no one would challenge you anyway. So why did I do this? I love all things Norwegian and I love handwork, so it was a perfect combination for me. I have a grandfather that comes from Telemark and close relatives there, and I saw their beautiful bunads, and so I thought I wanted to do that. And I had a good friend who wanted to do it at the same time. So we signed up to go to Ely, once to Vesterheim, for bunad camp. And we went probably for 6-7 bunad camps, and 3 years later we each were done with our bunads. My bunad is called an Telemark beltestak bunad. It's characterized by this wide belt and this what they call a wheel. It's a heavy wool piece, which makes it wonderful. If I could dance, you can rub it, and it wants to flare out. And there were 2 other choices for Telemark bunads, one worn by the Queen, which is beautiful, covered with embroidery. I didn't know that I'd live that long to get all the embroidery done, so I picked something simpler. Mine has just embroidery on the apron, and that even could have been ribbons, but I decided I wouldn't cheat. I do some embroidery, and on the collar of the blouse and the cuffs. The other one was too simple. It's called a stokkoliv. It has no embroidery, but it's very pretty too. Dan's is from Rogaland. His great-grandmother came from Rogaland. Did I mention my grandfather came from Telemark? And rules for our bunads, we had to have brocade, but it didn't matter what color. So he and I chose, or I probably chose, that we would match.
You chose.
And so, yeah, that was, and just to note, Dan's suya even is specific to a district within Rogaland, where his ancestors came from.
Did you want to mention the knife?
And he's cheating. He's wearing my great uncle Gunnar's bunad knife from Telemark. So what I learned besides how to make a bunad, I learned to really appreciate the ingenuity and creativity of the Norwegian women. They made things that would last forever. Typically a bunad is made or purchased when you begin confirmation. You wear it for all special events throughout your life. Weddings, baptisms, Sutnamai, of course. They design it so it has wide seam allowances, so they don't say if you get wider, they say when you get wider. You can take it apart and expand it easily to fit you. And they did really fun things, like this is woven with, it's card woven, a deck of cards that you could make at home with 4 holes, and one in the middle can create a shed, so a weaving shuttle can go through and you can weave one of these. So anyway, I think that's enough about, that's probably enough about my bunad, our bunads, and thank you for listening.
Hi everyone, I'm Becca McKenzie. I'm the daughter of Louie Nelson, the sister of Suzanne Thompson and Dan and Peter Nelson, the wife of Bruce McKenzie, my videographer, and a longtime member of Bethlehem, with a slight hiatus. After we graduated from college, Bruce and I got married and moved to Montana, where we raised our family in Great Falls. We moved back here about 20 years ago and have been blessed to join this community and be among family and friends and the best church choir in the city. So I'm beginning with my stereotype of Granny knitting in a rocking chair. Yes, I am all of those things. So I wanted to tell you about knitting. I knit for charity, I knit as gifts for family and friends, and I knit for myself. For charity, I've knit prayer shawls for Bethlehem, lots of those little caps we put into the newborn kits for Women's Day of Service, and I knit hats and scarves for LSS and other charities. But my favorite thing to knit is a Norwegian sweater. Norwegian sweaters, as we all know, are sometimes in fashion, sometimes out of fashion, but they're always warm on a walk in the winter. And they last forever, and they look good. So I found that I could make my own Norwegian sweaters in the patterns and the colors that I chose, and I could do it for less money than it cost to buy one. So I'm going to show you some of the Norwegian sweaters. Some of them have been given away to my children and grandchildren. So the first sweaters are from Dale of Norway. This is where I started. This is the sweater I probably wear the most. You've probably seen it. Then the next sweater is a taupe and blues. The next sweater is in green and black, and it's got sort of a duplicate stitch in the center, so I didn't have to use too many strands at once. Norwegian knitting requires stranded color work, which means you have more than one color on each row. It's good to do that because it is compelling knitting. It's what they call potato chip knitting, just one more row as you watch the pattern develop in front of you. It's a lot more interesting than row after row after row of the same thing. So I started with these 3 Dale of Norway sweaters, or Dale, and then I found Solveig Histall, who wrote a book called Poetry of Stitches. She is the designer for Orleana of Norway, and she's inspired by textiles and objects of different kinds she finds in museums. One sweater is motivated by a boat, of all things, including the barnacles, but it's a gorgeous sweater. This one was inspired by the bodice of a bunad. This one by a bridal skirt. The skirt itself, the body was a blue on blue damask. The belt was a striped white and blue, and there was a trimming of embroidery on the bottom. She's recreated that in knitting. This is my favorite story and one of my favorite sweaters. It was inspired by an antique Norwegian stool, or kubistol, I think they call it, in these very colors and these same designs. And this one comes with the bonus of a goofy ruffled cuff. Here's another sweater. These are all by Norwegian designers. This one doesn't button, it just folds over, but it's got the red on cranberry, which makes a deep sense of color. This one is kind of plain, but it's got extensive color work trim on the cuff and on the edging. And this we like to call the greatest injustice of the State Fair of Minnesota. I thought this was my masterwork when I submitted it. Different patterns, different colors, I-cord binding to separate them, and I was discounted for having a rolled collar, which I will tell you is part of the design feature. So that's the sweaters I've knit. This is one in progress. This little section in the center is what they call a steek. Norwegian sweaters are knit in the round, and if you're going to make a pullover, you're good, you're done. But if you're making a cardigan, you have to cut it open and put on the button band. So there are a few suggestions for cutting a steek. One is to cut the steek and then to go lie down in a dark room with a cold washcloth on your head. The second is to drink a glass of wine before you cut the steek, which is not a bad idea. And my favorite is to have my mom standing right beside me while I cut the steek. So that's my story on Norwegian sweaters. I love knitting. I love keeping my hands busy. Nothing like watching a Twins or a Wild Game with knitting in your lap. And I love that I've met lots of new people and great people through the knitting community. And it's wonderful at the end of the day to provide someone you love with a gift you made with your own hands. Thanks. Bye.
Hi, my name is Glen Duncan, and I like to mess around with the harmonica. What in tarnation is it, people asked as they gathered around. 10 holes, 20 notes, blow and draw, I said. Teensy little thing, they laughed. What can you do with it? So I played a little tune for them, and they seemed to enjoy the sound. to give you a little brief history of the harmonica, a clockmaker in Germany by the name of Hohner was the first true manufacturer of the harmonica. And the year was 1865, and it was the end last year of the Civil War. And there was 2 crates of crude 10-hole harmonicas bound for the United States from Germany. And Hohner sent 2 of his cousins along to help unload them and sell them for a whopping 10 cents apiece. Now the problem was, with the banjo picking, guitar strumming, fiddle playing public accept this new instrument? Well, the rest is history. These harmonicas are found their way into orchestras, into bluegrass music, backup for country, and just folks like me that like to mess around with them and create your own style. The 10-hole harmonica is called a diatonic, which is a big word for the 8-tone scale, which goes do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, and it corresponds with the white keys on a piano. Now, my first experience hearing a harmonica was on a farm that my dad run in Wisconsin, and he had to hire a couple of men during the summer for haying season and planting and this and that. So one of the guys was an elderly gentleman, and in the evening, sometimes he'd get his harmonica out and play, and I'd listen to it, and I just enjoyed the sound. And his name was Axel Olson, and he was from Foley, Minnesota. I remember that so well. Well, I joined the Navy later on, and I was over in the Mediterranean on aircraft carrier USS Randolph in 1958, and I had to go up to the ship's store to buy something. I don't know what it was. But anyway, lo and behold, there was one harmonica in the showcase, and I just knew it was destined to be mine, so I bought it, and it was took a long time to learn how to play something that was recognizable on it. In fact, this is the very harmonica I bought. It's called an Echo by Hohner, and you can play both sides on it. One side of this one is A, and the other side is D. And harmonicas come in 12 different keys, but the Echoes, you can play both sides, and they're a whole different sound. I was going to tell you that a friend of ours, her name is Cindy Jacobson, one day gave me this little box. And she says, "This is my dad's, and I'd like for you to have it." So I opened it up, and what was in there? A little 4-hole harmonica. And I thought, yeah, with my big hands and big mouth, I don't know if I can play this thing or not, but I'll try. So I did a little of this. The darn thing did play, and she was just ecstatic. She thought it was cute and everything, but she didn't know you could play a tune on it. Well, I think I'd like to wrap this up by playing what I understand was one of Pastor Chris Nelson's favorite hymns. It's called "Come Thy Fount of Every Blessing." And that's all I got.
Hi, I'm Barbara Lundy, and been a member of Bethesda for 7 years and into genealogy for many years. I bought my genealogy software in 1999, and I'd just like to share some adventures I've had in genealogy with you and invite you into the hobby because it's really fun. So I did buy my software in 1999, and it helps me write books. And so I've written books for wedding, baptisms, funerals, and had a lot of fun with it. And for the Library of Congress, I've donated 3 books there, so they're in their catalog under my name. When my Thomas and Aaron got married, I didn't know what to give them. And so I think she asked for their genealogies, and she knew I was interested in that. And bound in white leather with gold writing here. And so I gave them this book, and my software, other than different than some software, will make books with tables of contents and indices. So there's an index in the back that shows which page everybody is mentioned on. So that's kind of fun. And over COVID, the Ancestry.com website was available from people's homes through the Hennepin County Library. Right now it isn't anymore, but you can go to the library and get it. And I used to go to the Library of Congress and access it there. But over COVID, I found, as far as I know, my only living relatives in Minnesota. And you inspired me to write them this thick 50-some page genealogy showing how we're related. And I'm sending it to them to try to make contact with them at Elk River. So that's kind of fun. And so I want to invite you into the hobby. There is a Twin Cities genealogical club, but it's in Mendota Heights. It's in a fairly modern building now in Mendota Heights, and they have all kinds of records of, I suppose, electronic as well as paper, of Norwegians and Swedes and well, other people in Minnesota. So that would be an avenue if you're interested. It's really fun, and their books get kind of thick because there are different ways of looking up, of representing genealogy, like a family tree from yourself, and then all your ancestors would go out to the branches. That shows from whom you've been descended. But another way of looking at it is to, well, who are my cousins and what are they like? So you go out to one of those branches way out there and you say, okay, what are his descendants? And then you have a family tree the other way with all the cousins of the different generations along the bottom. And so different, and then you have it graphically, so you have boxes, or you're one box, and then your parents are 2 boxes, and their parents are 4 boxes, and so forth, as well as just by narrative. And I have over 30,000 people in my database now, so I have quite a few, and you can use that for telephone numbers, addresses, family pictures, things like that. So it's really nice to keep track of your relatives or your friends that way. So because it's easy to look up then. And some of the occasions of giving this book, one of my friends was descended from her husband that she was marrying was descended from Daniel Boone, which according to some of the websites Daniel Boone was descended from kings of who were kings of Judea before Christ was born. So I ended up with 3 large 3-ring binders as a wedding gift of printed all his and her genealogy. So it's really fun to be able to connect with people that way. It's kind of nosy, and sometimes you don't get answers, but you can, if you say you're doing it for genealogy, sometimes answers come forth. So it's been 5 minutes, and it's been a lot of fun with genealogy. So please contact me, and I'll tell you how to do it yourself, or even help you. Thank you. Bye.
Hi, I'm Jane Hancock. I do artwork of a specialized kind called botanical art. As you would guess, botanical art is all about plants. I started taking lessons in this art form on a whim about 20 years ago, and I got hooked, and pretty soon it became a strong avocation. I'll show you a few examples of my artwork. Here's a watercolor painting of a parrot tulip that I did a few years ago. As you can see, botanical art has a very strong tradition of meticulous realism. That's because this is a very old art form that began as scientific illustration. Scientific accuracy is still highly valued in this art form. I'll show you another piece. This is a drawing I did in pencils, meaning, well, also called graphite, a few years ago, of a whole catalpa tree. This catalpa tree is growing in my neighborhood, and one year I visited it many times in March and April before the leaves came out. So as you can see, botanical art is not just about flowers. Any medium that is applied entirely by hand is allowed to be used in botanical art. Watercolor is the most popular medium, but colored pencils are popular too. And here's a colored pencil drawing I did of a branch of a wild plum tree when it was in blossom. This one is based on some wild plum trees that are growing in the backyard of a friend of mine. For one more example, I'll show you something with vegetables. I got these rainbow carrots from a supermarket. Vegetables can be a lot of fun to paint and draw too. Every time my rainbow carrots got old, I just ate them and got some new ones to work from. People often ask how long it takes to make artwork like this, and as a matter of fact, hundreds of hours can go into them, starting with observing the plants carefully and taking photographs of them and lots of sketches. And all that before you begin the actual painting. For me, personally, these projects can last for many months. If you're interested in seeing more botanical art and seeing some in person, there's a group exhibit of botanical artists coming this summer in July to the Bloomington Center for the Arts. If you'd like information about the dates and location of the exhibit, please just send me a note and I'll put you on a list to get information shortly before the exhibit opens. Thank you, and I hope you've enjoyed this little presentation.
Hi, I'm Louie Nelson, and I have been a member of Bethlehem since my daughter Becca was a little baby. And Bud, my husband, was a lifelong member of Bethlehem. My father was ordained in the old Bethlehem, and my father and mother were sent to China as missionaries by Mrs. Orwell, and a member of Bethlehem. So, and then my dad came back as a visitation pastor a number of years later. So the Bethlehem influence is in our family. Suzu and Becca still belong, and Dan and Peter were also here and were confirmed. So here's my hobby. I had paper dolls, and they started when I was, I don't know, probably 8 or 9 or 8, I'm not sure, because we were quarantined with scarlet fever. In those days, that's what was done, and because my brothers got it first before I did, we were there for 6 weeks. So we had a lot of time and a lot of time in our hands and not much to do. So I started with the one paper doll and made many more. I can show you those, and that's what I did. Just a minute. Here are the paper dolls, and I will just tell you a little bit about them. They had their names. I wrote the names on the back, and they were made out of cardboard, but not fancy cardboard, mostly something from a magazine or thick paper. So the first one was Billy Ann Peters. She is 20 years old, 5'6.5" inches and 110 pounds. Then we have Jerry Lee Richards, who is 21, 5'6" and 116 pounds. We have Stephanie Allen Bruce, 18, and she was 5'5" and 110 pounds. We have Carol Lee Wayne, 19, at 5'6" and 106 pounds. And I've lost some of the other ones. So I've got Patricia Deanne Power was 19 and 5 4.5 inches tall and 110 pounds. We had Bonnie K. Forrester, who was 18, 5'5" and 113. And then we had Kathleen Shore Ogden, who was 5'4.5", 20 years old and 112 pounds. Mine were slim. So here we go for the rest of the things. I'll show you what I drew. These were mostly son's clothes, shorts and bathing suits, even strapless bathing suits back then. That was what I showed them. Then we had nightgowns that I made. Then we had uniforms, like a nurse's uniform. Then we had the outfits with the turbans with the scarf around the neck. I don't remember what they're called, but they were popular at one time. There are the hats. Then this is the, these are the costumes. This is the cowboy costume, and I don't know what she was doing in that one. And whenever they had legs on the outfits, that's because I had certain kind of shoes on them, probably ankle strap. Then the next ones are these pants outfits. And the pants, if you notice, are all very full. And then I came down to jodhpurs. I'm swinging a little bit. Those are jodhpurs with the boots. And then I even had some short pants. I didn't know I even thought about that back then. Then you come to the sports. Did we do this? Mm-hmm. The sports, we've done that? Mm-hmm. Okay. Then here we are in the outfits. And these are mostly, if you notice, all the skirts are full. And some of them have jackets, long sleeves and short sleeves and 3/4 sleeves. And some of them had blouse. Some of them are very tight at the waistline. Some have bloused up outfits. Oh, notice the cross on that one I gave her. I made sure that she had that would show. And then we go to over here to these are the short sleeve ones, or suits. Those are suits. And then I think I have some more uniforms, and I have some short sleeved. And if you notice, they're all tight. One button's down the front. Then we come to the outfits with coats, fur coats, and fur jackets, and separate fur jackets that can go. And then we have more fur jackets, as you can see, and this is some more outfits. And then we have long gowns. We have a gown. Some are strapless, some have sleeves, some are very patterned. And the one that I get a kick out of are these two, the orange and the purple, because what I did with those is I would color them with color crayons and then turn them over on a piece of paper and iron them, so you got a different color on them. I think that's kind of neat. And then some of these dresses were extravagant, and that's the one again with the fur and the other thing. And then we go to the wedding gowns. And the wedding gowns were different kinds. Some had the trail of the for them, and some were very marked. And then this one has the girl, and you can see that she just fit inside here. There she is inside with her gown on. That was what I played with for a long time, including into probably junior high, maybe even high school, because my father was a Haugianer, and you didn't do any work on a Sunday. So, and I didn't go to movies, so that's what I did.
How many do you have?
Oh, I didn't count them all, but I had different categories. I had 97 categories, as you can see, and in each one of them, there might have been 2 or 3 or 4. So I think I have a collection probably close to 500 paper dolls. And I think my kids and grandkids even played with them a little bit. So that's what I did way back when, and I still am interested in fashion things and color, and I guess that's the way it is. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Arnold Krueger. Maria and I would like to play a fun little piece by the Austrian composer Fritz Kreisler. The name of the piece is Syncopation.
Bees are ancient creatures. Bee fossils date from 100 million years ago to the time of the dinosaurs. There are over 20,000 species of bees, but only 6 are honeybees, and only 1 is Apis mellifera, our Bethlehem honeybee. They are one of God's most fantastic creations. Honeybees have 5 eyes, 4 wings, 2 stomachs, and 2 antennae. Their bodies are completely covered with hair, even their eyes and tongue. Every part of their body has a unique function. Honeybees live in colonies with 50,000 other bees. They communicate with each other with highly developed odor pheromones and physical movements like the bee dance. They perform complex tasks inside the hive in coordination with the other members of the colony. They exchange information about forage locations and navigate hundreds of miles daily to gather nectar, pollen, and water resources. They rival human ability to live in organized and well-functioning societies. The lifespan of a worker honeybee is 6 weeks. As they emerge from their cells as adult bees, they begin a myriad of complex tasks, including tending and feeding the brood, building wax cells, cleaning the hive, maintaining the hive temperature, feeding and grooming the queen, and guarding the hive from predators. The second 3 weeks of their life is spent foraging and pollinating flowering plants. An individual honeybee will visit 5,000 flowers in a day. It takes 1 million flower visits to produce 8 ounces of honey. Our food system depends on them. Why are we keeping honeybees at Bethlehem? Well, we all need a home. Our Bethlehem honeybees teach us to see our home as more than our house. Our home is the planet. Bees, like other pollinators, are indicators of the environmental health of our planet. They are stressed by the loss of natural habitat, industrial monoculture farming practices, and the widespread overuse of synthetic pesticides and herbicides. Now, with the arrival of warmer weather, it's a perfect time to renew our commitment to the health of each other and the planet we share with all living things. Plant and support healthy gardens and pollinator-friendly lawns and flowers, just as our Bethlehem Youth and Green Team members have in creating our own church pollinator garden. Learn where healthy food comes from and support farmers practicing regenerative agriculture. Avoid dangerous pesticides and herbicides such as neonicotinoids and glyphosate. Love a dandelion like the bees do. As a beekeeper, I find working with bees humbling, serene, enlightening, and meditative. Honeybees are a twinkle in God's eye, one of the many joys of creation. We must all be beekeepers, earth keepers, soil keepers, water and air keepers.